The night air in the council hall was heavy, pressing down on everyone in the room like a physical weight. The scent of wet earth, leather, and tense bodies filled the space. But it wasn't the usual smell of the pack's authority. No, tonight, there was an undercurrent of rebellion, the kind of rebellion that could change everything. And there, standing across the room, was Kayla. She was the human who had dared to cross the pack's boundaries, the one who had taken what was mine. My blood boiled at the thought. I, Draven, alpha of the Stormclaw pack, had spent years carving my place in this world, building it from the ground up. And yet, here she was standing defiant in my territory. She had dared to steal my pup, and tonight she would pay. My eyes locked with hers, and the air thickened with every breath. She was dressed simply. Nothing like the noble wolves who surrounded me, nothing like what she was supposed to be. Yet there was something in her stance that stirred the fury inside me. "You've broken the sacred laws of our pack, Kayla," I growled, my voice low, but enough to carry across the stone walls. "The child you stole is mine, and I will not let you keep him." She didn't flinch. Instead, her dark eyes met mine with a calm that unnerved me. She didn't speak, but her stare was enough. I could hear the wolves around us murmuring, the tension rising with each passing second. "Do you understand the gravity of your actions?" I demanded. Still no answer. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was also the calm before the storm. I took a step closer to her, the power of my wolf surging beneath my skin. The room was growing colder, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered but the heat of my rage. "Where is my son?" I snarled. Her lips curled into a faint smile, one that said she wasn't afraid. "He's safe," she said quietly. "Safe in my arms." That was all it took. The floodgates of my anger opened wide. I advanced toward her, my steps deliberate, each one heavy with the weight of command. My claws lengthened, my wolf demanding release. But I held it back. I had learned the hard way that pure rage led to mistakes, and I would not let Kayla be another casualty of my temper. "Safe," I repeated, as if her words were a challenge in themselves. "How can you possibly keep him safe, human? You have no idea what you've unleashed." I could see the determination in her eyes, the fierce resolve that only a mother could possess. Or was it something more? She looked me up and down as if measuring me, as if she were the one in control of this moment. And for the first time, I doubted myself. No, not self-doubt. Not exactly. It was the way she stood, unmoving, unshaken. "My name is Kayla, and I'm not afraid of you," she said, her voice calm, even though the tension in the room thickened with every passing second. The room fell into an uneasy quiet as the other wolves watched, unsure how to respond. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was my moment, my strength on full display. I was the alpha, the king of this land. But she, the human who had dared to steal my son, was slowly unraveling everything I had built. It was maddening. I clenched my jaw, willing my wolf back. I needed to think clearly. I needed to get my son back. "You've made a mistake coming here, Kayla," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You'll leave this place with nothing but your life. If you are lucky." Her gaze softened, and I saw something I hadn't expected. There was no fear in her, only understanding. She stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back. "Why do you think you have the right to decide my fate?" she asked, her voice no longer the calm defiance I had expected, but something deeper. Something that made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. "You're the one who failed. Not me." "Failed?" I laughed darkly. "I've failed. You think you can come here, take my pup, and lecture me on failure?" My eyes narrowed, rage simmering beneath the surface. I could feel my wolf pressing against my skin, urging me to act. "I didn't take him," she replied softly. "He ran to me." Her words hit me harder than any blow could. My wolf screamed in frustration, but I stood still, rooted to the spot. "You don't understand," I ground out, my voice tight with the emotion I was fighting to keep in check. "You'll never understand. He's my son, and I will not let you turn him into one of your own." A sudden silence filled the room as Kayla's eyes flickered toward the shadows of the hall. The scent of pine and wet earth seemed to linger, a reminder of the pack that had always been mine. "Then why don't you go and get him?" she said, the challenge hanging in the air between us. "If you truly are the alpha, go ahead and take him. But I won't stop protecting him." I felt the weight of her words sink in. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even intimidated. She was resolute. A quiet force, standing between me and the only thing I had left in this world. My thoughts scattered as I tried to focus. Leo, my son, where was he? I took a deep breath, trying to ground myself in the present. I had always been the one in control, the one who held power in my pack. But now, as I stood before her, my heart raced with a strange mix of fury and uncertainty. Kayla wasn't just some rebellious human who had trespassed. No, she was something different. The scent of her, wildflowers and summer rain, lingered in the air, a scent that hit me like a blow to the chest. My wolf howled inside me, demanding I claim her. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. She had stolen my pup, and no matter what my wolf said, I couldn't let her off the hook so easily. Yet, there was something undeniable about her presence. The way she stood her ground, the way her eyes held mine unflinching. It was as if she had known the consequences of her actions, but was willing to face them head-on. For a moment, I almost forgot why I was angry. "I will not let you take him," I said, my voice steady, but the uncertainty lingering in the back of my mind was still there. "I will not let you ruin his future with this nonsense." She didn't flinch. She didn't back away. Instead, her gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something in her eyes that almost made me question everything. It wasn't fear. It wasn't defiance either. It was something deeper. "You think you can keep him safe by punishing me, but you're only driving him further away," she said, her voice gentle but laced with a quiet strength that rattled me. I stepped back, my claws retracting as my wolf settled, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. This was wrong. This was not how this encounter was supposed to unfold. "Let's say I'm willing to listen to you," I said slowly, my voice low. "Where is he now?" Kayla hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, revealing a small wooden crate by the side of the room. There, nestled safely inside, was my son Leo, his small body curled up under the warm blankets, his breathing soft and steady. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. But before I could reach him, Kayla stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "I won't let you hurt him," she said firmly, her hand raised as if to physically stop me. The protective mother in her was clear, but the alpha in me was also undeniable. "I don't want to hurt him," I growled, my voice almost a plea. "I want to bring him home. You're not the one who gets to decide that." Kayla's eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw something that made my breath catch: empathy. She wasn't trying to make me angry, wasn't trying to defy me. She was trying to understand me. And that understanding, that quiet wisdom, made the wall around my heart crack just a little. "Then let me help you," she said, her voice gentle now. "Let me show you that Leo is safe here. Let me show you that you can still protect him, even if he's not with you in the way you expect." Her words cut deeper than I would have liked. She was right. I had been so focused on control, on asserting dominance, that I had missed the most important thing: the well-being of my son. I glanced down at Leo, and my heart twisted in my chest. He looked peaceful, unburdened by the weight of the world. He looked safe. But then, as if my heart had sensed the pull, I saw something shift in him. His eyes fluttered open, and he blinked sleepily, his gaze landing on me. The confusion in his eyes mirrored the same feelings that had been swirling inside me. "Daddy," he whispered, his small voice trembling. "What's happening?" I knelt down beside him, my heart swelling with a love I couldn't explain. "I'm here, Leo," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm here to bring you home." But even as I said the words, I realized the truth of Kayla's words. This wasn't just about punishment. This wasn't just about bringing Leo home. It was about understanding, about realizing that the best way to protect him wasn't through control and power, but through love and compassion. And as I looked at Leo, I understood what I needed to do. I needed to let go of the old version of myself. I needed to let go of the anger and the need to control everything. I stood up slowly, turning to Kayla. "I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for everything I've done," I said, my voice raw. "But I can promise you this: Leo is safe. And for that, I will do whatever it takes." Kayla nodded, her eyes warm with understanding. "You don't have to do this alone, Draven," she said softly. "We'll do this together." And in that moment, I realized that perhaps the greatest challenge wasn't about being an alpha. It was about learning to trust, learning to care. I was no longer just the leader of the pack. I was a father, and I was learning how to protect what mattered most. The days that followed were filled with a strange sense of balance. I remained in the shelter, observing Kayla's every move, trying to find some justification for my past actions. But with every passing day, I found myself less focused on her mistakes and more on what she was doing for Leo. She was an anomaly in my world, where power was everything, where authority was absolute, and where compassion was often seen as a weakness. But Kayla had shown me something that had begun to shift the foundation of everything I knew. She was teaching Leo things I hadn't even considered: gentleness, patience, understanding. And I found myself slowly, almost imperceptibly, letting down the walls I had built around my heart. But the danger hadn't passed. Livia's threat still loomed large in my mind, and the knowledge that she had orchestrated the events that brought me to this point gnawed at me. She wouldn't stop. She was a wolf driven by envy and ambition, and nothing short of destruction would satisfy her. I couldn't let that happen. Not to Leo, not to Kayla, and certainly not to my pack. One evening, I found myself standing at the edge of the shelter, staring out into the forest. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over the land, but the weight in my chest remained. Alpha. I turned at the sound of Marcus' voice. He stood behind me, his face unreadable but his posture tense. The ever-present loyalty in his eyes was something I had come to rely on, but tonight, it was tinged with concern. Marcus, I greeted him, turning to face him fully. What is it? He hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering toward the shelter behind me before locking with mine. It's Livia. She's making moves, Draven. I've seen scouts from the Black River Pack on our borders. My heart clenched at the mention of her name. I had hoped, in some small part of me, that she would retreat, bow her head and accept her defeat. But I should have known better. Livia was never one to back down. Have they crossed into our territory? I asked, my voice steady despite the surge of anger that threatened to rise. No, but it's only a matter of time, Marcus replied. We need to prepare. I let out a long, slow breath, my fingers curling into fists at my sides. I had come so far. I had started to believe that peace was within reach. But the reality was that this battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. I'll handle it, I said finally, turning back toward the shelter. We'll deal with this on our terms. Marcus didn't argue. He knew as well as I did that there was no avoiding the storm that was coming. But there was something else in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, a quiet worry that echoed my own. Understood, Alpha, he said, his voice low. But don't forget, we've made progress here. We've made progress with Kayla, with Leo. I paused, turning to look at him again. His gaze was earnest, his loyalty unwavering, but the words hung in the air between us. I nodded slowly. I haven't forgotten. But this ends tonight, Marcus. We can't afford to let Livia destabilize everything we've built. Marcus gave a solemn nod. I'll gather the warriors. We'll be ready. As he turned to leave, I stayed where I was, staring at the horizon. The weight of my decisions pressed down on me. This fight with Livia had already cost me more than I was willing to admit. And yet, I had to keep going. I had to protect Leo. I had to protect Kayla. And I had to protect the future of my pack. That night, as the moon rose high in the sky, I gathered my warriors around the perimeter of the shelter. My body was tense, every muscle coiled with the anticipation of what was to come. I had given orders to tighten security, to prepare for an assault that might come at any moment. But as I stood there, my eyes swept to the small house where Kayla and Leo were staying. I could see the faint light filtering through the window, casting shadows on the walls. Inside, I knew they were sleeping safe for now. But I couldn't ignore the fear that had settled in my chest. I had told myself I would fight for them, but I wasn't sure if I was prepared to face what was coming. A soft sound behind me broke my thoughts. I turned, and to my surprise, Kayla stood in the doorway, her figure silhouetted by the dim light inside. You're leaving, aren't you? She asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the wind. I nodded, swallowing the words that had been swirling in my throat. Yes, we have to take action before it's too late. She stepped forward, her gaze soft yet unwavering. I don't want you to go. The simple words hit me harder than I expected. I had built walls around myself for so long, pushing everyone away, keeping my emotions in check. But Kayla, she had found a way to break through them. I'm not going to let them take you. I won't let them take Leo, I said, my voice low, filled with a quiet promise. She walked toward me, her steps slow but purposeful. And you're not alone in this, Draven, she said, reaching out and gently placing her hand on my arm. We're in this together. All of us. I looked down at her hand, the warmth of her touch sending a spark of something through me. And in that moment, I realized she was right. I had been fighting alone for so long, pushing everyone away, believing that I had to bear the weight of it all. But I didn't. Not anymore. Together, we could face whatever came next. Together, we could rebuild. "I'll be back," I said, the words settling into my chest. "I promise." The night was silent, but for the occasional rustle of leaves in the trees and the distant call of a nocturnal bird. The full moon above bathed the land in an eerie, silver glow, casting long shadows across the forest. I stood at the edge of the shelter, watching my pack ready themselves. My warriors, loyal to the core, had been gathering in the shadows, each one prepared for the battle that lay ahead. But despite the outward show of strength, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this fight would be unlike any other. My mind kept returning to Kayla. Her words, her touch. She had gotten too close, and I hadn't even realized how much of my heart I'd already given her. There was a vulnerability there, one I had never allowed myself to acknowledge until now. And yet, here I stood, preparing for war against a rival pack, against Livia. I had to put everything else aside, focus solely on protecting my son and my pack. "Alpha." Marcus's voice broke through my thoughts. He stepped forward, his eyes searching mine. "We're ready." I nodded, my jaw tight. "Good. Keep your eyes sharp. We don't know how far they've infiltrated." Marcus hesitated, as if considering saying something more, but he simply nodded and turned to gather the others. I watched as the warriors moved out, each step filled with purpose. As the last of them disappeared into the night, I took one final look at the shelter. Kayla and Leo were inside, and for the first time since this all began, I felt a glimmer of hope. But that hope was fleeting. Livia had made her move, and I knew the price of failure would be too high. The rival pack wouldn't stop at simply trying to take my pack's land. They would come for everything. We moved quickly through the forest, staying close to the shadows, our steps as silent as the night. The scent of the Black River pack lingered in the air, sharp and unpleasant. Their scent had become a constant presence on our borders over the past few days. But tonight it felt different, more ominous, more calculated. Marcus and I led the way, the rest of our warriors following closely behind. The tension in the air was palpable. Every tree, every rustling leaf seemed to whisper threats, as if the forest itself was preparing for war. We reached the clearing by the edge of the swamp, where the Black River wolves had set up camp. They were already waiting for us. Livia stood at the front of their ranks, her eyes cold and calculating as she watched us approach. The smug smile that curled her lips made my blood boil. "I knew you'd come, Draven," she said, her voice carrying through the night air. "You always think you can control everything. But the world doesn't work like that." I stepped forward, my hands clenched at my sides. "This ends tonight, Livia. You've taken enough from me. I won't let you destroy everything I've worked for." She laughed, the sound dark and mocking. "You think you can stop me? You think you're still in control? You've lost everything already." I gritted my teeth, stepping even closer. "I haven't lost anything yet." Livia's eyes flickered toward the back of the group, where several of her most trusted warriors stood ready. I could feel the pressure building, the realization dawning that this wasn't just about land or power anymore. This was about Leo. This was about my family. "Then let's see if you can still protect them," she said coldly. With a snap of her fingers, the warriors moved. I barely had time to react before a wave of wolves descended upon us. The battle erupted instantly, the air filled with snarls, growls, and the clash of steel against bone. I fought with a fury I had never known before, each swing of my blade a step toward reclaiming control. But as the battle raged on, something shifted in the air. The scent of the swamp was thick, clouding my senses, and suddenly I realized Livia was nowhere to be seen. "Where is she?" I growled, scanning the battlefield. Marcus appeared beside me, his eyes sharp. "She's playing a game, Draven. Stay focused." I wasn't going to let her slip away. I couldn't afford to. I cut through the enemies in front of me, my vision narrowing as I searched for Livia. The fight was brutal, but every instinct I had told me that the real threat wasn't the pack in front of me. It was the woman who had set this trap. The sound of the battle continued around me, but I couldn't focus on anything but finding Livia. My mind raced, piecing together the pattern of the attack. Something wasn't right, and then I saw it, the flash of movement in the trees to the left. Livia. She wasn't fighting. She was retreating, leading me into the depths of the swamp. "Marcus," I shouted, turning to him. "She's trying to draw me in." He nodded, understanding immediately. "We'll follow you, Alpha. But be careful." I didn't wait for him to finish. I turned and pushed through the underbrush, my senses heightened. The ground beneath me was treacherous, soft and muddy, but I couldn't let the terrain slow me down. Every second counted. The fog was thick, the scent of the swamp overpowering. But I could smell her now, the faint trace of her scent beneath the swamp's musk. It was there, lingering like a ghost. I pushed harder, my claws digging into the earth for leverage. And then I saw her, Livia, standing by a group of her remaining warriors, a cruel smile on her face as she watched me approach. "You're so predictable, Draven," she taunted. "Always rushing in, always thinking you can control the outcome." My teeth ground together, the rage building once again. "This ends now, Livia." But as I took a step forward, something caught my eye. A flicker of movement to the side. I turned in time to see a flash of fur. A wolf, not from our pack. They had set another trap. Before I could react, the ground beneath me shifted, and I was thrust into a pit. The earth collapsed around me, and I tumbled, my body hitting the cold, muddy ground below. I scrambled to my feet, but it was too late. The wolves from the rival pack had surrounded me, blocking my exit. And in the distance, Livia's laugh rang out. "You never learned, Draven," she called. "You should have stayed in your fortress." I stood in the pit, the earth pressing in on all sides, the weight of my failure sinking in. The rival pack had lured me here with a carefully orchestrated trap. Livia's laugh still echoed in my mind, a sharp reminder that I had walked straight into her snare. The wolves around me were closing in, their eyes glowing with hunger and malice. I could feel their presence, their intent to finish what they had started. But I was no longer the alpha they thought they knew. I wasn't the leader who would succumb to their games. Not anymore. "Get out of my way," I growled, my voice dark and low, vibrating through the air. The wolves hesitated for just a moment, uncertain. It was all the time I needed. I roared, a primal sound that came from deep within my chest, as the power of the alpha surged through me. I threw myself forward, breaking through the pack of wolves with a speed and force that left them reeling. My claws slashed through the air, carving through the opposition with precision and raw strength. In the midst of the chaos, I saw her again. Kayla. My heart tightened at the sight of her standing on the edge of the clearing, watching the battle unfold. She had come after me. What was she doing here? "Kayla," I shouted, my voice a mixture of surprise and fury. "What are you doing here? Get back to the shelter." Her eyes met mine, a fierce determination in her gaze. "I'm not leaving you to fight alone, Draven," she called back, her voice filled with resolve. "I will protect Leo, and I will protect you." The words hit me like a storm. I hadn't wanted her here. I hadn't wanted her involved in this war. But she was, and there was no going back. In that moment, I saw something in her, something I hadn't fully realized until now. She was more than a mate, more than a woman I had fallen for. She was a force, and she was fighting alongside me. I fought with renewed fury, pushing through the remaining wolves with the force of a hurricane. Every blow, every move, was not just for my pack anymore. It was for Kayla, for Leo, for the future I had begun to believe in. But as the last of the rival wolves were driven away, the ground beneath me began to shift. I turned, my heart hammering in my chest, and I saw Livia standing at the far edge of the clearing, her eyes burning with fury. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice low with venom. "This isn't over, Draven. This is just the beginning." I stepped forward, my body tense and my teeth bared. "You've lost, Livia. This pack is mine, and you'll never threaten my family again." Her lips curled into a smirk, but there was something wild in her eyes, something desperate. "We'll see about that," she said, and in a flash, she turned and disappeared into the night, her figure swallowed by the darkness of the swamp. The battle was over. The immediate danger had passed, but I knew deep down that this war was far from finished. I stood there, panting, my eyes scanning the clearing. My warriors were recovering, gathering the fallen, and tending to the wounded. The once quiet forest was now alive with the sounds of triumph and grief. But then my eyes fell on Kayla again. She was standing near the edge of the clearing, her gaze focused on me, her expression unreadable. And in that moment I knew. I couldn't fight this alone anymore. I made my way over to her, my legs heavy with the weight of the battle. "Kayla," I said, my voice low. "I've failed you." She stepped forward, her eyes softening, and gently placed a hand on my chest. "You haven't failed anyone, Draven. You've just been trying to protect what's yours." But now it's time to protect what we've built together." Her words struck deep, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the walls I had built around myself begin to crumble. "Together," I repeated softly, my voice thick with emotion. She nodded, her smile barely there, but filled with more warmth than I had ever known. Together. The aftermath of the battle left a heavy silence hanging in the air. The tension, the bloodshed, the fear, it was all still fresh, and yet there was a shift. The once divided pack had come together, stronger than before. We had defended what was ours. But now we had to rebuild. The following days were filled with the kind of work that came after war. Repairing what had been broken, tending to the injured, and most of all, looking to the future. Kayla had become an unexpected pillar in the midst of it all. She had helped tend to the wounded wolves, provided comfort where there was fear, and shown a strength I had never anticipated. And Leo, he was thriving, safe, happy. For the first time, I saw him with a smile on his face, running around the shelter with the other pups, unburdened by the weight of our world. But as much as I wanted to focus on the present, my mind couldn't help but return to the past, to Livia, to the threat she posed. She wouldn't stop. I knew that now. But this time, I wouldn't face her alone. I had Kayla at my side. I had my pack. And for the first time, I understood what it meant to be a true leader. To lead with compassion, to fight not just for power, but for those you love. One evening, I stood on the edge of the forest, staring out at the horizon. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the land. Beside me, Kayla stood quietly, her presence a comfort. "We'll protect this," I said quietly, my voice filled with determination. "We'll protect our pack, our family." Kayla reached out, her hand resting lightly in mine. "We will." I turned to face her, my heart full with a love I hadn't known I was capable of. "I don't know what the future holds, Kayla," I said softly. "But whatever it is, I'll face it with you. I promise." And as she smiled up at me, her eyes filled with trust and warmth, I knew that this was just the beginning of our journey together. The days that followed felt like a strange dream. The battle with the Black River Pack had ended, but its echoes reverberated in every corner of the forest. My warriors worked tirelessly to rebuild, patching up wounds and reinforcing the defenses. Yet, despite the physical restoration, there was an emotional rift that remained, one that had been there long before the battle even began. I couldn't stop thinking about Leo, my son, my heir, the boy who had run away from his own home, frightened by the very world I had built for him, the world I had thought I was protecting him from. But now, as I watched him play with the other pups, I saw something different in him, something that made my heart swell with both pride and guilt. Leo was no longer afraid. He had found a place where he felt safe, where he felt loved. And that place wasn't within the cold walls of my fortress. It was here, in this humble shelter, surrounded by those who understood him. I glanced over at Kayla, who was standing by the small fire, her eyes focused on Leo as he played. There was a calm about her now, a quiet strength that I had come to rely on. She had shown me a way that didn't rely solely on power or fear. But even in the midst of this peace, I could feel the looming shadow of Livia. I knew she wasn't done with us. She had made it clear that this wasn't over. The question that gnawed at me, the question that I couldn't shake, was this. How far was I willing to go to protect my family? And how far was I willing to change in order to do so? The night was quiet, the usual hum of the forest muted by the stillness of the air. I sat alone in the study, the soft crackle of the fire the only sound filling the room. My mind was racing, replaying the events of the past few weeks, and yet, I felt no closer to finding answers. Kayla had made it clear that she wasn't going anywhere. She was here to stay, by my side, by Leo's side, and I couldn't imagine a future without her. But there was still so much I didn't understand about this bond between us. This fate. My wolf demanded her presence, but my human side resisted. How could someone so different from me be my mate? I couldn't deny the pull, the need to claim her. But I had lived my life with one focus: power, protection, strength. Could I really open myself up to her? To this feeling that went beyond anything I had known before? Alpha. Marcus's voice broke through my thoughts as he entered the room, his face tense, his eyes filled with urgency. "There's something you need to see." I stood up immediately, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is it?" He stepped closer, holding out a piece of parchment, its edges rough and frayed. I took it from him, my eyes scanning the contents. The words were clear, a message from Livia, and it was every bit as chilling as I had feared. "I have your son, Draven," it began. "If you want him back, come alone. You have until dawn to meet me at the old standing stones. Bring no one, and do not attempt to trick me, or I will destroy everything you hold dear." My stomach twisted in knots. This was the trap I had been waiting for, the one I had known was coming. But this time it was different. This time, Livia was no longer just a threat to my pack. She was a threat to my family. "I won't let her take him," I said, my voice low, but filled with determination. "We'll go." Marcus shook his head, his face filled with concern. "Draven, she's playing a game. You can't go alone." I turned to him, my eyes blazing with fury. "If I don't, she'll kill him." The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I had to choose. Protect my son by any means necessary, or risk losing him forever. "I'm going alone," I said, my voice final. "I'll take care of this." The journey to the standing stones felt like an eternity. The fog of the swamp had thickened, and the air was dense with the smell of wet earth and decay. The full moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape, and every step I took felt heavier than the last. As I approached the stones, the memories of my ancestors rushed through me. Ancient leaders who had fought for their packs, who had sacrificed everything for their people. I had always believed that strength was the most important trait of an alpha. But now, as I stood on the edge of the standing stones, I wasn't sure anymore. Livia was waiting for me, her figure barely visible in the mist. The moment I stepped into the clearing, her voice rang out, soft and mocking. "You came alone, just as I knew you would," she said, her tone dripping with contempt. How predictable. I clenched my fists, my muscles tense as I scanned the area. "Where is he, Livia?" I growled. She stepped forward, a cruel smile on her face. "He's safe for now. But you've made a grave mistake, Draven. You've put yourself in a position where you have to choose. Your son or your pack." I took a step forward, my eyes narrowing. "I'll choose both." Livia laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "You can't. Not in this world. Not in the way I play the game." Suddenly, the clearing seemed to close in around me. The stones felt like they were pressing down on me, and I realized Livia had trapped me here. This wasn't just a meeting. This was her final attempt to destroy everything I had built. "You think you can control this," she said, her voice growing cold. "But I've already won." The air in the clearing was thick with tension, every breath I took feeling heavier than the last. Livia's voice echoed in my mind, but I couldn't afford to be distracted. I was standing on the precipice of a decision, one that would determine the future of everything I held dear. My son, my pack, and the woman who had become my mate. Livia, standing at the center of the ancient stones, smiled like a predator savoring the scent of her prey. She had always been calculated, always knowing exactly how to manipulate every situation to her advantage. But I had underestimated her once, and I wouldn't make that mistake again. "You think you've won?" I said, my voice low and controlled, every word carrying the weight of my resolve. "You're wrong." Her smile faltered for a split second, but then her eyes narrowed, a flicker of something dangerous passing over her features. "Is that so?" she asked, her voice thick with venom. "Then prove it, Alpha." Before I could respond, there was a sudden shift in the air, a ripple that I felt deep in my bones. The forest around us seemed to hold its breath, the wind stilling, the sounds of the swamp falling silent. I turned sharply, my senses on high alert. The clearing was empty except for Livia, but I felt the presence of something, or someone, just beyond my reach. A rustle came from the trees, and my heart skipped a beat. The shadows shifted, and then I saw him. Leo. My son stood there, eyes wide with fear but alive, unharmed, and standing on his own 2 feet. He wasn't bound or held captive. He was free. Livia's eyes flashed, her smile returning as she looked past me. "You're too late, Draven," she said. "Your son has already made his choice. He's with me now." I stepped forward, but Leo's voice stopped me before I could reach him. "Daddy." His voice was small, almost a whisper, but it rang out like a thunderclap in my ears. "I'm scared." My heart wrenched at the sound. "Leo," I shouted, my voice trembling. "I'm here. I'll always be here. You're not alone." Leo looked up at Livia, then back at me, his small face filled with confusion. "I don't know what to do, Daddy," he said, his eyes filled with tears. "She said she would protect me." She said you didn't love me anymore. The words struck me like a dagger. How could she have twisted his mind like this? How had I let myself get to this point? I looked at Livia, the fury in my chest boiling over. You've gone too far, I growled. This is where your game ends. Livia stepped forward, holding her hands out as if to stop me, her expression calm but cold. Don't be a fool, Draven. You're just like the others. Too predictable. Too easy to manipulate. Her words hit me like a slap, but they didn't land the way she intended. I realized something in that moment. Livia's power wasn't just in her control over me, over my pack. It was in the way she twisted my own insecurities, my own fears against me. But no more. I took a deep breath, my mind clearing. I'm not playing your game anymore, Livia, I said, my voice firm. I know who I am now. I'm not the monster you want me to be. Livia's eyes flashed, the smirk fading from her lips. You think you've won? She spat. You think you can just walk away from this? You've made your choice, Draven. You've chosen your mate over your pack, your son. Her words were like poison, but they no longer had the power to wound me. I was done letting her control me, letting her dictate my actions. I stepped closer to Leo, my arms open, and in that moment, everything shifted. Leo looked at me, his eyes filled with uncertainty, but something else too, a trust that I hadn't earned yet, but was willing to fight for. Come here, son, I said, my voice softening. You're safe now. I'm sorry for everything. Leo took a hesitant step toward me, and my heart soared. He didn't run. He didn't hesitate. He came to me. And in that moment, I realized something even more profound than the battle we were fighting. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about love. It was about trust. And it was about the future I had to build for him, for Kayla, for all of us. I pulled Leo into my arms, my heart swelling with the love and protectiveness I had been missing all these years. But as I held him, I knew the battle wasn't over. Livia was still a threat, and I couldn't let her tear us apart again. Enough, I said, my voice cutting through the tension in the air. This ends here. You've lost, Livia. It's over. Livia's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of something else in them now. Fear, maybe. You think you can stop me? You think you can just walk away from this? I'm not walking away, I said, my voice cold and unwavering. I'm taking my son back, and you're never going to touch him again. Livia took a step back, her jaw clenched as if she were preparing for a final strike. But before she could make a move, I raised my hand, and my warriors surged forward, surrounding her. There was no escape for her now. You'll pay for your treachery, Livia, I said, my voice final. But it won't be with my son's life. Her eyes flickered with disbelief as the warriors closed in. She had underestimated me. She had underestimated everything I had become. The winds shifted, and the night seemed to breathe with a new energy. The tension, the fear, the weight of the past, it was all lifting. And for the first time, I could see the future clearly. A future with Leo. A future with Kayla. A future that was no longer defined by power alone, but by love, redemption, and the strength to protect what truly mattered. The clearing was quiet now, the only sounds being the distant rustling of the trees and the soft footsteps of my warriors as they secured Livia. The battle was over, but the scars of it would linger. Not just on the land, but in my heart, in the hearts of my pack, and in the life I was now trying to rebuild. I turned to Kayla, who had remained at the edge of the clearing, her eyes fixed on me. Her face was soft, but there was a quiet intensity in her gaze. She had seen me at my worst, seen the monster I had been, but now she saw the man I was striving to become. Leo was still in my arms, his small form pressed against me as I cradled him. His breathing was steady, his face peaceful in a way that made me feel like I was holding something more precious than any crown or title I could ever claim. Kayla, I said softly, my voice low with emotion. I owe you everything. She shook her head, her expression gentle. You don't owe me anything, Draven. You're doing it. You're changing. For Leo. For us. Her words hit me like a hammer, the weight of them pressing down on me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the family we were building together, the future we were creating for Leo, a future that would be different from the one I had known. I felt a shift inside me, a realization that this was what I had been fighting for all along. Not power, not control, but love, connection, family. I had spent so many years thinking that I had to be strong, that I had to rule with an iron fist. But true strength, the kind that mattered, was in being able to protect those you loved, to show them that you cared, that you would fight for them no matter what. We're not done yet, I said, my voice firm as I looked at Livia, still being restrained by my warriors. But we've won the first battle, and we will continue to fight not with fists but with our hearts. Kayla stepped forward, her eyes bright with determination. What's next then? I looked at her, at the woman who had shown me that there was more to life than the cold, lonely existence I had built for myself. Next, I said, my voice steady, we rebuild. Not just our pack, but our lives. We start fresh. Together. Livia's eyes flickered with something dark as I turned to face her. You can't control this, Draven, she sneered, her voice filled with venom. You've already lost. You just don't know it yet. I stepped forward, my jaw clenched as I stared her down. No, Livia, I said, my voice calm but filled with finality. You've lost. You're done here. You've threatened my family, my pack, and now you will face the consequences of your actions. I turned to my warriors. Take her to the edge of our lands. Leave her with nothing. She's no longer welcome in this pack. As they moved to carry out my order, I turned my attention back to Kayla and Leo. The weight of the moment was not lost on me. I had won back my son. I had reclaimed what was most important. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges. Livia's defeat was only a small piece of the puzzle. There were still rival packs out there, still threats to our peace. But for the first time, I felt like I had the strength to face them. I looked down at Leo, his small arms still wrapped around me, and I realized that this wasn't just about protecting him. It was about being the father he deserved, the man who would guide him, not with fear, but with love. Let's go home, I said, my voice filled with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It's time for us to start living the life we deserve. Kayla stepped forward, her eyes soft with affection as she took Leo from my arms. We'll build it, Draven. Together. The three of us walked back toward the shelter, the rising sun casting its first rays over the land. The world felt different now, as if the weight of the past had been lifted, and the future was something we could face with hope and courage. The days that followed were filled with the kind of quiet peace I had never known. The battle with the Black River Pack was over, but the true work had just begun. We spent our time rebuilding, not just the shelter, but the foundations of our pack. The lessons of the past were not lost on me. I had made mistakes, big ones, but I had learned from them. And now, I was committed to making sure that my pack, my family, would never feel the same kind of fear that I had put them through. Kayla and I worked together, side by side, not as alpha and mate, but as equals. She had proven herself time and again, not just with her strength, but with her wisdom. And I knew now that I couldn't have done this without her. Leo thrived in the safety of the shelter, surrounded by the pack, by people who cared for him, and by Kayla, who loved him like her own. I saw the change in him. He was no longer the scared little pup who had run away from his home. He was becoming strong, confident, and secure in the knowledge that he was loved. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, we grew closer as a family. We celebrated the victories, no matter how small. And when challenges came, we faced them together. One evening, as we sat outside the shelter, watching the sunset, Kayla turned to me, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. We've come a long way, haven't we? She said softly, her hand resting in mine. We have, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. And it's only just the beginning. The days grew longer as the seasons shifted, bringing new challenges and opportunities. The land was healing, our pack was stronger than ever, and Leo's laughter filled the air in a way that reminded me every day of how much we had gained, and how much we had lost. I had spent so many years fighting against my instincts, trying to build a kingdom, a legacy. But now I realized my legacy wasn't in power or land. It was in the love and trust one had earned with those I cared about. I stood by the edge of the shelter, my gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun set behind the mountains. The quiet of the evening was soothing, but there was still a restless energy in me, a feeling that there was more to do, more to protect. Kayla walked up beside me, her presence a calm reassurance in the storm of my thoughts. She didn't say anything at first, simply stood next to me, her hand finding mine as we stood together. Her warmth was all I needed. "Is it done?" she asked after a long silence. I turned to look at her, my heart swelling with the depth of what I was about to say. "It's done," I said, my voice steady. "Livia is gone. The Black River Pack is in disarray. The rivals won't dare challenge us again for a long time." She nodded, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. And your pack, rebuilding. They've been through a lot, but we're stronger for it. I paused. We've learned the true meaning of strength. And it's not in the fight. It's in the bond we share. Kayla squeezed my hand, her smile softening. And Leo? I glanced over at Leo, who was playing with the pups in the distance, his laughter echoing through the trees. He's thriving. For the first time, I feel like he's truly safe. Her eyes followed mine, watching our son. You've done well, Draven. You've shown him what it means to be a leader, but more importantly, what it means to be a father. I turned back to her, my heart swelling with gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Kayla. You've shown me what real strength is. She shook her head, her eyes filled with a quiet humility. No, Draven. We've shown each other. We've built this together. And we will continue to. The peace I felt in that moment was like a balm to the wounds of the past. I had walked through fire, had lost so much, but in the end, I had gained everything I had ever truly needed. A family, a home, a future. But even as I savored the calm, I knew it wasn't the end. There would always be challenges ahead. As Alpha, I would have to make hard decisions, and I knew that some would not agree with the path I had chosen. But I had learned something invaluable in this journey. True leadership isn't about ruling with fear. It's about leading with trust, with love, and with the courage to protect what you hold dear. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time in my life, I was ready to face it with everything I had. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work, rebuilding, and strengthening the pack's ties. The battle with Livia had left its mark, but it had also opened my eyes to the importance of unity, of standing together through everything. Kayla, Leo, and I spent our days growing closer, learning from each other, and forging a life that I never could have imagined before. We had become a family, by fate, yes, but also by choice. A family that fought for each other, that supported each other, and above all, loved each other fiercely. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat with Kayla in the quiet of the shelter's courtyard, watching Leo run around with the other pups. His laughter was like music to my ears, a sound I would never take for granted again. Kayla leaned her head on my shoulder, her hand resting on mine. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked softly. I turned to look at her, my heart beating a little faster at the thought of our future. "I think about it every day," I said. "But right now, all that matters is this moment. What we've built, what we're building." She smiled, a soft, content smile that made my heart swell with pride. "You've done it, Draven. You've created something beautiful." I looked at her, my mate, the woman who had become my everything. "We've done it," I corrected gently. "Together." In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them as a family, united, strong, and filled with a love that nothing could break. As the weeks passed, we continued to grow stronger. The rival packs had retreated, and for the first time in a long time, there was peace in the land. But even in the calm, I could feel the weight of the responsibility on my shoulders. I was no longer just an alpha. I was a father, a mate, and a leader in ways I had never imagined. And as I looked at Kayla and Leo, I knew that the future wasn't something I had to fight for. It was something I had to create. Together, we would build a legacy not based on power, but on love. A legacy that would last for generations to come. I turned to Kayla, who was standing beside me, her hand in mine. "The future is ours, Kayla," I said softly, and I couldn't ask for a better partner to face it with. She smiled up at me, her eyes shining with hope. "We're just getting started, Draven. Together, we can accomplish anything." And as we stood there, watching the sunset together, I knew she was right. The world ahead was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. Our family was stronger than ever. And together, we would face whatever came our way. The following months felt like a constant whirlwind of progress and setbacks. The lands we once fought for were now slowly healing, but so were we. We'd come so far from where we had started, from the broken pieces of a shattered legacy. Now, in the quiet of the evenings, I could see it all taking shape. A future built on strength, love, and unity. Kayla, Leo, and I had become a force, not just as a family, but as a pack. The relationships we had forged, the bonds we had strengthened, had turned into the foundation upon which we stood. But even with all the victories, even with the quiet moments of joy that we shared, the shadow of what had transpired still lingered in the back of my mind. Livia was gone, but her influence was still felt in the undercurrents of our pack. There were those who still harbored resentment for the changes I had made, for the decisions I had taken in the heat of the battle. But those voices were growing quieter with each passing day, replaced by those who saw the wisdom in the new way, our way. I walked into the clearing at the center of the shelter one evening, my thoughts heavy with the weight of responsibility. Leo was with the other pups, his laughter echoing through the trees, but there was a quiet about him that hadn't been there before. A calmness that reminded me of how far he'd come since that fateful night when he had run away from the fortress. I sat down next to Kayla, who was tending to a small fire. She glanced up at me, a smile crossing her face that seemed to light up the entire evening. "You're thinking again," she said, her voice soft. "I am," I admitted. "There's so much to do. I don't know if we're ever truly done." She reached out, her hand resting gently on mine. "We're never done, Draven. But we're not alone in this. We've come so far because we're doing it together." Her words brought a sense of peace I hadn't known I was looking for. I turned to her, meeting her gaze. "I didn't deserve you, Kayla. I didn't deserve the love you've shown me, or the trust you've given me." She shook her head, her eyes filled with that familiar quiet strength. "You didn't need to deserve it. We were meant to find each other. And we did. That's what matters." I felt a lump form in my throat. I had spent so much of my life hardened, closed off, determined to control everything around me. But here, with Kayla and Leo, I had found something deeper than I had ever imagined. A love that defied logic, that wasn't based on power or duty, but on something pure and real. I watched Leo play in the distance, running through the clearing with the other pups, his small figure a reminder of everything I had fought for. My son, my heir, a child who had once been afraid of the very world I had created, but who was now flourishing, surrounded by the pack, by love. "We're making a good life for him, aren't we?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. Kayla nodded, her smile soft and full of affection. "We are, and we'll keep making it better." For the first time, I felt like I could breathe easy, like the weight of the past was finally lifting. There would always be challenges ahead, always be threats to face, but I wasn't alone anymore. We were a family, a pack, and together we could face anything. As the days passed, we focused on fortifying our pack, not just physically, but emotionally. We built stronger bonds, not just with those who had always been loyal, but with those who had been on the fringes, hesitant to embrace the new way. My leadership was tested again and again, but each time, I found my resolve strengthened by Kayla's unwavering belief in me. Leo grew bolder, more confident, as he learned what it meant to be an alpha. He spent his days with the other pups, learning the ways of our people, playing in the woods, and growing into the future leader he was destined to be. And each day, I felt pride swelling in my chest at the young wolf he was becoming. One evening, as the sun began to set, I stood at the edge of the shelter, my eyes scanning the horizon. The land was quiet, peaceful. It felt right, in a way I hadn't known before. Kayla came up beside me, her steps light on the grass. She stood silently for a moment before speaking, her voice soft. "What do you see when you look out there?" she asked. I thought for a moment before answering, my gaze fixed on the horizon. "I see a future, one I'm proud of. A future for Leo, for our pack, for us." She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "It's a beautiful future, Draven. You've built it with your own hands." "We've built it." I nodded, squeezing her hand. Together, as we stood there, hand in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I knew that our journey was just beginning. We had come a long way, yes, but there was still so much to do. So much to create, to protect, to nurture. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I was ready. Ready to walk it with Kayla, with Leo, and with the pack by our side. Weeks passed, and with each day we grew stronger. The shelter was now a place of true sanctuary, a home for all who needed it. The pack had flourished under the changes I had made, and though not everyone agreed with my decisions, those who mattered, those who truly cared about the future of our people, stood with me. The future was no longer a question mark, but a promise that I would continue to fight for what mattered most. My family, my pack, and the future we would build together. One evening, as we sat around a fire, the warm glow of the flames casting long shadows, I looked at Kayla, at Leo, at the pack that had become my everything. I realized that, despite all the hardships, despite the pain and the loss, this was where I was meant to be. This was home. and I would protect it with everything I had. The end.